Padma Bhushan, Dr. B.M. Hegde.
A good evening to all of you. How are we this evening? Good. Well, I'm supposed to be speaking to you for the next 50 odd minutes, and you are supposed to be listening to me for the next 50 odd years. This is the contract. But let's have a break. If any one of you in the audience has finished his or her duty before I seem to have finished mine, because we teachers go by the calendar, not by the clock, all that you do is raise a hand and I shall stop. Because my speech is not structured and it's not supposed to run for a little time. It just stand up, speak up, and when the time comes, shut up. So I am ready to shut up when you are ready or when you are done with listening to me. The topic I am supposed to talk to, as the brochure says, is changes in the science of healing and wellness. Redefine your views on science of health for daily living. This is what the topic says. Well, friends, health is different from disease. You probably know. And most doctors don't know what health is. We are trained in the medical school for looking after illnesses. Thousands and thousands of them. There are books, yellow, but not a single thing on health. What is health is the question. Does anyone know what health is? Any of you in the audience? Health is wealth. That's right. Health is the absence of illness. Let's take these two definitions. First is health and wealth. How many of you knew that mankind was absolutely healthy before money came into this world? You don't know. There's a very nice study called the Innu Community Study. The study is so beautifully published, called Failure of Scientific Medicine, the Innu Community Study. Innus are an aboriginal race off the coast of Saskatchewan in Canada, who had no touch with what is called civilization, what you and I call a civilization. They were a sort of an aboriginal race. They were all for themselves, and they didn't have touch with mainland Canada at all up until 1732. And they had an egalitarian society and a hunter-gatherer sort of a type of society, where they all worked, those able-bodied men worked, and they distributed their food equally. There are no banks, there are no loans, nothing belonged to nobody, everything belonged to everybody, and they all enjoyed it. There was no word called I, you know I? There was only one word called we. The difference is very simple. I starting with illness, we starting with wellness. Innus had beautiful history written on rock, on leaves, and various other things, which graphically told about only two things that they died of. A, old age, which of course is inevitable. If the world has to go on, those who are born will have to die. Two, predation. But what happened in 1732? Williams Company, one of the trading companies from mainland Canada, came into Innu land and started a barter company. We will give you a biscuit, you give us the hide. We will give you this, you give us the hide. That's where bartering started, business started. To cut the long story short, today every Innu is a Canadian citizen by right. And would you believe, every Innu is heir to every disease from common cold to cancer. Very interestingly, 10 years precocious to the Canadian Caucasian. Supposing heart attack is very common in the 5th decade for a Canadian, it's very common for the 4th decade for the Innu. What has changed for the Innu? After 1732, money came into their life. And money brings in a lot of problems. I don't know how many of you know, when the first industry started in Europe, to be precise in England, 1802, there was this romantic British poet, William Wordsworth, who wrote a poem called The World is Too Much With Us. How many of you have read it? It's a very nice poem. Go home and read it. I'll give you 4 lines. The world is too much with us, late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little do we see in nature that is ours. We have sold our soul. I added 2 words to the devil, a sordid boon. Today, we have sold our soul in every walk of life. I don't know about printing. In every walk of life, we have sold our soul. And our aim is making money and making big money. Greed, of course, is a human nature, but Wall Street greed is something that has invaded us. You know what Wall Street greed is? Greed for everything. Everything must be mine. I am sure you all know 7 people in this world, 7 people in this world, 7 people in this world own 50% of the world's wealth. And 5% of the wealth is shared by 50% of this world. 3.3 billion people share 5%. I mean, is this fair? This is exactly what is called the Wall Street greed. Now, why are we now connecting money with health? And what is health, to be precise? Our friend said, health is absence of disease. Is there anybody here in this audience, including me, who has no disease? Anyone? Can you say, I have no disease? I don't know. Actually, there is no one without a disease. If we can scan all of us for a cancer cell, a mutated cancer cell, everyone will have not one cancer, but about 10, 15 cancers. But they don't kill you. They die themselves. But supposing I told you today that you have 10 cancers growing in you, would you survive more than 10 days? That is exactly why that definition came in 1947, which is called the Alma Ata definition of the WHO. You know what WHO is? World Health Organization. What is IMF? What is UNESCO? Do you know what these are? You don't know. Please get this book. You're a printers. Get this book called Perpetuating Poverty. Perpetuating Poverty. It's a beautiful book which is compiled by Cato Institute in Washington. You write to them as an organization, they'll send you the book free. Cato Institute, 1000 Massachusetts Avenue, Washington, D.C. 20001. And write to them saying that we are the Printers Association, we do good to others. Send us his book called Perpetuating Poverty. So beautifully it shows all these organizations are there to keep the third world poor. You're talking about this word science, very good word. Science, science. What is science? Knowing. What is science? Knowing. Knowing, you can know about drama, music, and that's science, is it? Anybody? Sorry? Science is an experiment. The real meaning of the word science is trying to understand this nature. But what the science of present day, monetary science, is trying to do is to teach nature a lesson or two. That's where we have gone wrong. Supposing you don't have a child, let us say. You're married, you're prosperous, you don't have a child. What's the use? You try everything possible and then probably adopt a child. But today, the present science doesn't let you that. They'll give you a test tube baby. You probably don't know the intricacies of the whole thing. Apart from all that, we still don't know what happens with test tube babies because we have only about 5 to 10 years of experience. We are trying to teach nature a lesson because of money. I'll tell you a story, not a story, a true thing. A young boy got his PhD from MIT. Eric Drexler was his name. Eric was so proud that he had a PhD from MIT that he started a company. That's what happens. Science immediately starts a company, technology. Technology is science riding piggyback on technology for making money. The company's name was Futuristic Inc. Future. And he claimed that he can make self-replicating nanobots. No father needed, no mother needed. He can produce a custom-built baby for you. Just like in the olden days, custom-built cars were built. In the earlier days, Daimler, Benz, and the British Motor Corporation, they used to build cars. After you say, I want this car, it's built. Only Henry Ford came and started mass production of cars. Now, this boy claimed that he can make that, and venture capitalists poured money there because that's where the future is. Supposing you make human beings without any father, mother, it's a big industry, you know. This boy collected about $100 million in 1 week from venture capitalists. At that time, his own professor who gave him the PhD, who is himself a Nobel laureate, Richard Smalley, wrote an article in the Boston Globe saying that, forget about making a nanobot, you can't even make a DNA. So the company closed, chapter 11, and the man went home with $100 million. This is called science. Do you understand that? If you want to know what science is, from the Western scientists themselves, forget about this villager. I will give you a book. Please read this book. It's a small book, very cheap, but you must read it. Easy to read also. Even a non-scientist, an arts student, as our friend claimed, can also do that. And this book's name is The Golem, Golem, The Golem. He's writing down, good. The book's name is The Golem. What is golem? Golem is not an English word, it's a Hebrew word. Any Malayalis here? No? What is golem? What? Oh, that is golem. Anyway, the golem is a Hebrew word. I'll tell you what it is because the same in Malayalam also. So probably Hebrew and Malayalam have some connection. Written by two physics professors in New York, Harry Collins, C-O-L-L-I-N-S, Harry H-A-R-R-Y, and Trevor Pinch, T-R-E-V-O-R-P-I-N-C-H. These two people so beautifully tell you how the whole science is an edifice, an establishment to cheat us and keep us under the crowd and then frighten us saying that without science you can't live and then keep us under their control. The third world country people, the colonies to be under their control. That was the intention of what is called the original science of Newtonian, Einsteinian worldview of two dimensions, space and time. We believed that. We teach that even today in our schools and colleges, which has been proved wrong nearly 100 years ago. Year was 1925 when Einstein's own student in the Zurich Polytechnic told him, your science is you're talking through your hat. All that science is gone. And whatever you've been talking, all the Nobel Prize that you get, you know, everybody gets a Nobel Prize, provided you are anti-Indian and pro-West and pro-science. Very easy. I'll give you an example. 1906, J.J. Thomson gets the Nobel Prize for saying that electrons are particles. Okay? 30 years later, his own son, who becomes a professor in the same institute, Cavendish Institute in Cambridge, gets the Nobel Prize for saying they're waves. Father said they're particles and son said they're waves. And then 32, Erwin Schrödinger says they're wavicles. They're particles as well as waves. He also gets the Nobel Prize. But if you ask all these people, right up to the present ones, the only man who got the Nobel Prize for saying the truth is Werner Heisenberg himself, who said, nobody can know what an electron is. Everything is uncertain in this world. That's the only truth. It's called the uncertainty principle. But everyone gets the Nobel Prize. But no one has seen an electron to date. Why can't you see an electron? Can you see God inside a temple? Gurudwara? Mosque? Church? No. There's a beautiful stanza in our language, Kannada language. God, I search for you all over the place in buildings built with stones and mortar. But you staying inside, love and compassion. I have not seen you so far, God. What a beautiful saying. You're going in search of God all over the place. You can't see God and you can't see electron. But the scientist says electron exists, though he has not seen it. And the same scientist, reductionist science says there is no God because God can't be seen. See what a beautiful thing. How do I see you? Because a few photons leave you and hit my retina. Then I am aware of your existence. If one photon leaves an electron, it no longer is an electron. So nobody can see an electron at all. So beautifully put by a poet. Who has seen the wind? Christina is an American poetess. Who has seen the wind? Have you seen the wind? Neither you nor I. But when the winds move and trees dance, the wind is passing by. Who has seen God? Neither you nor I. But when you are in trouble, you feel God. That's why a lot of people have survived without getting frustrated and committing suicide, because the concept of God. In the West, reductionist science says there's no God, and when they get frustrated, the only epidemic they have is suicide. Now, what is health then? Not absence of disease. Let me give you a new definition of health, which we gave and the IOM has accepted it. Health simply means enthusiasm to work. Enthusiasm to work. And enthusiasm to be compassionate. This is called health. Did you understand that? Health is enthusiasm to work and enthusiasm to be compassionate. You can have 100 diseases, still you can be healthy. Look at Steve Hawkins. He has got a disease called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which doesn't permit him even to move a single muscle. But the man, even today, 42 years after amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, according to my textbook of medicine, a man cannot live more than 2 years after the diagnosis of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. 42 years this man has been teaching physics in Cambridge. So you can be healthy. You don't have to be having absence of disease. Nobody has absence of disease. Even a newborn child can't have absence of disease. But you can be healthy though. Enthusiasm to work. There's a subtle difference between the two. What's the difference between enthusiasm to work and you all work, we all work? Is there any difference? Energy. Willingness to work. Passion. Want. What is enthusiasm? Entheos. En in Latin means inside. Theos means God. And God sits inside and provokes you to work. Enthusiasm. You know, for example, in the Gayatri Mantra at the end you say, Prachodayat, provoke me. And that's what is called enthusiasm. Enthusiasm to work is, you get up in the morning and ask yourself, do I want to go to work today or do I have to go to work today? Find out. Honestly, don't tell the answer to anybody, not even your wife or husband. Most of the answer is, I have to go to work because I have to get my salary. Left to yourself, you don't want to go to work. That means you are unhealthy. Do I have to be compassionate? Or have I got to be compassionate? Most of the time it is, I've got to be compassionate for society's sake. You are going in the car, you are in a hurry to go for the printers conference, and somebody meets with an accident ahead of you. And the fellow is lying on the road. And you say, oh, poor fellow, what a pity. How I wish I could help him. You don't want to help him. But you pretend to be compassionate. That's not real compassion. Enthusiasm to be compassionate is just say, stop the car, get out of the car, try and see if he's alive, and try to help him and take him to the nearest hospital if you can. That is real compassion, which is called enthusiasm to be compassionate. Just ask yourself these two questions in the morning, and the answers both are yes, you don't have to go for a checkup. Now the definition of health, absence of disease, do you know why it was done? 1947, everything is a business today. Just as printing is a business, doctoring is a business. So we want to have more patients. Just as you want to have more people to come for printing, we want to have more patients. How do we do that? We see that everyone born comes to us to see if he is healthy. So if you want to know if you are healthy or not, you must go for a checkup. Have you heard of the checkup? The biggest industry. It's called the screening industry. The biggest industry, because doctoring is not a big industry, because after all, in a given day, there are a few million people who are not well in the world. But every day, 6.2 billion people are there for screening. And when you screen, when you go for a screening, you become a patient. Did you know that? An American professor asked her brilliant student in the class. She was a brilliant girl herself, 52 years old. She asked the boy, who is a patient? The boy shot back, a man or a woman who sees the doctor becomes a patient. She was shocked. She said, is it true? Yes, madam, that's what happens in the world, he said. Matter of factly. Then she said, does he become a man or woman again when? He said, rarely ever, if ever. Because we have two rules for you. A, you must come for us and we'll make you a patient. Do you know how? We don't have what's called normal. There's nothing called normal in the human body. There can't be anything called normal because we don't know what normal is. Your normal is different from my normal. How can you say normal blood pressure is so and so, normal sugar is so and so? And these numbers are coming down every day. As there are more companies producing drugs for the disease, the numbers come down. When I was a student about 60 years ago, the blood pressure normal was supposed to be 160 by 110. Okay? And nobody died those days. Nothing had happened. Actually, the death rate is the same. They did an audit in Christie's Hospital in Manchester, which is the oldest hospital, which is primarily, of course, cancer hospital. They did an audit. They have got records from 1841, non-stop. They did an audit of a particular disease, one cancer, chronic myeloid leukemia, between two slots, 1900, 1940, 1950, 1990, 40-year slots. 1900 and 1940, all that we had for cancer was TLC. You know TLC? Tender loving care. It's called palliation. You give them good food, pat them on the back and say you're fine. They live comfortably, dignifiably till they die. Die you must. You can't, no, nobody can, I always tell my patients, why are you worried, man? Die you must. There's a queue you join when you're born. But we Indians are good at jumping queues. Sometimes we jump and go early. That's a different thing. But normally you join the queue, you end up. So what? So you're such a good man that you will go to heaven. That's where you wanted to go. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. You ultimately wanted to go to heaven. Perchance, God's accountant has kept the records little wrong and you end up in hell. So many of your friends are there. So you're such a good company there. In either case, you are happy anyway. You're probably happier after death than you are in this world. So nothing to worry. Now, but if you want really to see that you want to get a normal thing, all that we give you is we convert the average, which is a statistical term, into normal. How do I say what is a normal pressure, blood pressure of a patient? We take 1,000 people's blood pressure and then chart it on a graph, which is called a Gaussian curve, a bell-shaped curve. There are people with blood pressure of 180, 110, here 90 by 60, both sides are there. Now then we draw a median called mean plus 2 standard deviation. And that comes to somewhere. And we immediately say, this is the normal. Which means that all this on two sides, which are called false positives, they all become patients. So whoever goes for a checkup, for one parameter, 25% false positives. Today there is no one parameter. You go now for a TBS, total body scanner, 750 parameters are checked. 750 parameters can be checked. Multiply 750 by 25. What will be the number? If one man goes in checkup, probably 1,000 patients come out. So in short, whoever sees the doctor becomes a patient. But Ayurveda, the old Indian science, is a beautiful definition of health. Samadatuhu samagnischa maladoshaya prasannatma indriya manah swastha ityabidiyate. It says, you get up in the morning and ask yourself, can I work? Do I sleep well? Do I eat well? Do I piss well? Do I shit well? And do I work well? And don't I hate nobody? Yeah, I am healthy. So friends, health is not absence of disease. I am reiterating that to make sure that the point has gone home. And point is, health is two things. A, enthusiasm at work, and enthusiasm to be compassionate. Now what governs health? We all say lifestyle. What is this lifestyle? Lot of us, all of us have an idea that I must run a mile every day, and I must, reduce myself to have a no belly and 36, 24, 36 size or zero size or what have you. All this is myth. All this is myth. And all this has business behind it. You will be surprised to know that a study showed that obese people, overweight people, whom you think are very bad, if they're very active, they're healthier than all of us. What is important is activity. You must work because you are made to work. Ayurveda says samikshakari, work very hard. So it's like, doctors advising everybody to walk. A farmer went, I believe, to the doctor to see him. He said, you must walk for, healthy lifestyle. He said, I work almost 12 hours. The man who walks for 1 hour, other 23 hours he is doing a lot of other things. It's like a lot of people say, I do yoga.